for Media Day for Tennessee. Lots of more people will be available, including some coordinators and some players. I think you said all 4 quarterbacks speaking to the media as well, which is something that would not have happened under the previous administration. What are you looking forward to the most for Tennessee's Media Day, and what kind of an opportunity do you think this can be for Josh Heupel now as he approaches year 1 as head coach of the Tennessee Volunteers?
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting today that all the quarterbacks will be talking. So all at once, that'll be interesting too. Like, where does the crowd go? You know, like, does poor Brian Maurer just get ignored in the scrum, or how does that work? He's kind of been, from the outside world, he's sort of been dismissed as a factor, but who knows? I think this media day, if you're a Tennessee fan who follows media days, you'll get a lot more information out of this one than you've been getting under Jeremy Pruitt. And I know some people don't think that's a big deal. I actually do think it's a good sign. I mean, that's the type of thing with Heupel compared to not just his immediate predecessor, but even really in different ways, the string of predecessors. I think there is a certain level of, I don't want to say normalcy, but just lack of goofiness, okay, that comes with Heupel that
so far
is, so far. But I mean, if anything, Heupel could probably stand to be more dynamic, right? I mean, if anything, he could stand to be louder, more boisterous, more dynamic, but he's a very understated, even-keeled person. When's the last time Tennessee football had that as a coach? And you always compare these coaches to the predecessors, especially at Tennessee football, because there's been so many changes recently, and there's just so much just fodder with each guy. I mean, with Pruitt, we all know there's plenty on him, just him at the podium and just the way he ran things. And this is where I think this is a positive comparison. I think Heupel is going to be a lot more open with his program. There's going to be more connection from fans to the program, to the players, and that's good. Especially if you're Tennessee football at this point with your performance, you can't go about it like you're just this, like everybody's just going to be along for the ride because you're Tennessee football. I mean, you need to think about these things. It's helped plenty of other programs. It's not the most important thing, but it does matter, and Pruitt thought it didn't matter. Plus, he was very easy to make fun of. Butch Jones, very easy to make fun of. Derek Dooley, very easy to make fun of. And even Lane Kiffin. I mean, Lane Kiffin was a good coach in that year with Tennessee, but my gosh, like Lane Kiffin, especially at that time of his life in Knoxville.
It was something.
I mean, there was a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of stuff going on there.
Yes, there was.
So you got to, Heupel's nice and just kind of level, kind of even. What does that mean for the program? I think there's some benefit. I even think just how he's dealt with players and the portal and all these things that he's inherited. I think he's had a nice touch with all of it. I'm not saying I think that means he's going to win, be in Atlanta anytime soon with his team, but maybe a little bit of stabilize things, do what you do well, really well, have really good quarterbacks who give you a chance on most Saturdays. It's eventually get to that point and get this program to a point of respectability, because it's not there. I mean, forget championships, get to respectability.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's not there. And look, it's interesting. Like to your point, I'm trying to think of the last time a Tennessee coach was able to really strike the balance of being open with your program while also not going overboard. Like, I think Butch Jones at times, he tried way too hard up there to just be like this salesman. And, oh, look at this. Our GPA is this, and our we got our 16 former players who were on the practice field today. Like, all that's fine, and that's great. But sometimes you can go a little overboard with all that stuff, and it gets to the point with the fan base where, like, dude, nobody cares. Just win the game. Now, I think Pruitt went too far the other way, where he didn't feel like any of that stuff mattered, and it was just about, I'm a ball coach. I'm coming in to be a ball coach. All this other stuff I don't care about, I don't want to deal with. I think there's a balance to strike. I've been pretty impressed by so far from what I've seen with Josh Heupel and striking that balance. And you know this. I was not a fan of the Josh Heupel hire. I don't think it was a good hire. But I've been impressed by what I've seen from him on that standpoint of it. Now, can that continue as football starts to get played and the noise gets louder? Because, Heupel's no stranger to the SEC. He's been in the SEC before. But this is going to be a different animal than he's ever experienced. And it's going to happen at some point. I mean, Tennessee is still Tennessee. Tennessee fans are still Tennessee fans. And there will come a point where the losing gets old, because it's going to be a process for Josh Heupel to get this team back to respectability. There are a lot of holes on this roster. I agree with you. If they get to 6 wins this year, I think that's a pretty good year for Josh Heupel in his first year. And some Tennessee fans, they hear you say something like that, and like their body begins to convulse. Like they're like, 6 wins, a good year. What does that mean? I think that's where they are. I think that's what this program is. Can Josh Heupel continue to kind of thread that needle, have that balance, and remain even-keeled when maybe the noise starts to get a little bit louder on him from the fan base? That's going to be something that's pretty interesting to watch. Because there have been some coaches in the past that didn't handle that all that well.
Right, and I think you hit on it. So Pruitt not only shut everything down, no one gets to talk, all this stuff, but also like calling out fans at the first spring game. It's like, dude, you're not at Alabama. Like, do you understand what these people have endured, okay? And then with Butch, caring too much. And then also doing the whole, like, what do we want out of our media? I mean, no, man, you know what? We want you to win football games. And that's it. So he was too preoccupied with all that stuff. That stuff, look, media stuff matters in recruiting for sure. Coaches use that stuff against each other. They use good stuff for themselves. And so it's always a consideration. But Butch was too caught up in it, and I think it hurts your ability to do your job. I think with Heupel, the ideal situation is he's open, he's secure enough to be like, hey, there might be a player who pops off about the OC at some point. Okay, then you move on. And he's able to still focus and do his job. I think with both the last two guys, it was too much one way or the other.
Let's go to our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Frank texting in. Joe, I'm with you on Brady. He's the GOAT, but is there a more annoying person on the planet? I hope he chokes on his avocado ice cream. Jeez, Frank.
Wow. Golly, Frank.
You think he has avocado ice cream?
I've never heard of avocado ice cream.
Porce said that he eats avocado ice cream too, so maybe it is a thing.
Oh, so it's actually a real thing. Okay,
that sounds terrible.
It sounds awful. Hey, I'm going to go to the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com too. On the Vols topic, JC in Goodlettsville says Adam Sparks is the new Fredo Corleone. Would love to take him fishing to wish him well.
Yes.
Now you get that reference. Michelle, do you get that reference?
I can't say that I do.
Okay. Add a movie to the list.
That doesn't really surprise me, though.
What's the movie?
It's The Godfather.
The Godfather.
Oh, okay. Got it. I've seen
It's actually
parts of
Godfather
it.
2.
Yeah.
It's actually Godfather 2. I don't want to give it all away, though.
Just add it to the list.
Possibly the 2 greatest movies ever made. Just saying.
Just add it to the list. Put it on the list. You're in much better shape than Ryan Porth is. Much better.
Yes.
Love to hear it.
So I don't think there's any question about that. We'll continue the conversation on the Vols when we come back. Get to expectations on the field. What are some positions of strength, positions of weakness for this 2021 Tennessee team? We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. 1025 The Game is bringing you Nashville's best coverage of Titans training camp, presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans, Frontier Basement Systems, the All Things Basement League Company, the Trenches Shop in North Nashville, and the Cut Truck Mobile, Nashville's newest barbershop on wheels. You have control of time and place. Book your appointment at thecutTruckMobile.org. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Talking Vols, taking your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Joe, Jacob in Murfreesboro texting in. I think any UT fan would tell you that if Heupel can have a similar success as Dan Mullen has had at Florida, they'd be satisfied. Do you think that's possible? I know it's hard to say with him not being a head coach in this league as of yet. I mean, my initial reaction to that is, yeah, I think Tennessee fans would be very happy with Dan Mullen's success so far. He's 29-9 since he took over as head coach of Florida. Also including a trip to the SEC title game.
Yeah, he just went to Atlanta. So, yeah, sure. You'd also, be happy if Dan Mullen would have been the choice a few years ago, but that didn't happen. But I think you got to set your sights a little lower than that right now to be realistic. I mean, that program's in a totally different place than Tennessee's program. So, again, I just, when Heupel was hired, a coach I know in the business kind of asked a question. I wrote this back then, but, is this going to have a real opportunity, or is he looked at kind of like a Matt Luke at Ole Miss, get things stabilized, and then you're looking at the next coach. I don't think it's that. I think there's hopes. I mean, obviously Danny White, hired Heupel, brought him basically with him from UCF, that he can get this job done. But you just have to go in order of what's realistic. And right now, I think it's get to a stable situation, get to where you can realistically win 7-8 games a year, go to a decent bowl game. You got to improve the recruiting, but it's also so early right now to vilify anyone for the recruiting, because it's you have inherited such a bad situation. You got to get to the point of just being a solid program. You still would be an underachieving program in terms of your profile, your resources, and all this stuff if you're a 7-8 win program. But at this point, that sounds good. It should sound good to a Vols fan. I understand that 3 years down the road, there's going to be impatience if that's all it is, but you got to get there first. You're not even there yet. You got to get through the sanctions and all that, and then see if he can take you to the – so he may be a bridge coach, but I don't think it's like a Matt Luke situation where it's like basically, just deal with this crap and we're right now looking for the next coach. That's not the case. I mean, he's going to get an opportunity to get this done. Sure. You know what? Maybe he'll over-deliver. It is time for a Tennessee football coach to over-deliver. My goodness.
Yes, it is. I don't think there's any question about that. So I threw this out there on Twitter and just asked the question, what is the formula for the Vols to be competitive on the field in Josh Heupel's first year? And at Smashville Vol on Twitter says, divine intervention is our only hope. But Joe Rexrode, I ask you, as you look at this Tennessee team on paper, we went through the roster earlier in the show. They've got some decent pieces on offense. Obviously, a big part of that's going to be who's playing quarterback and how well can they play quarterback. It's not looking great on the defensive side of the ball. So with all that in mind, as you look at this team, the 2021 Vols, what is the formula in your mind for this team to be successful on the field? What would you define as successful on the field for this Tennessee team in Josh Heupel's first season?
I'm saying 6-6. And I know some people are going to say, no, man, that's setting your sights too low. But to me, success looks like being ready to go early. I think Adam Sparks laid it out pretty well, when he was on the show earlier about the schedule. You start with Bowling Green, Pittsburgh, Tennessee Tech. I think a lot more of Pittsburgh as a challenge than some people do. That's going to be a challenge. But you could be 3-0. Then you go to Florida, Missouri, South Carolina, Ole Miss, at Missouri. I agree with Sparks. Like 5-2 is possible at that point. It really is. If you are 5-2, I mean, at Alabama, at Kentucky, Georgia, there's always like the Tennessee schedules always have like some stretch where it's just you're packing these ridiculous games in a row. Now, maybe some people don't look at Kentucky that way, but that's a good roster, good program. Quarterback play, we'll see. But then you have South Alabama and Vanderbilt. Under my scenario, if they were to go 5-2, then they could be 7-5. But to me, if they were to, I can't even imagine 8 wins. Okay, I think that would be out of this world overachieving. 7-5 would be impressive. And again, Vanderbilt coming in Knoxville at the end of the year. Right now, as I look at that game, I think both offenses are probably going to score a lot of points. I would probably favor Tennessee, but I mean, I think it's close. I do. As bad as Vanderbilt's defense may be, Tennessee's may also. So I mean, six wins would be, I think, a good start. That would be success to me. 7 would be significant success. 8 would be. I think 8 is just way too optimistic this year.
Well, I'll say this, and Adam brought this up earlier, and I get it. I get the sentiment. There's a good chance this team could start 3-0, and there is. You've got Bowling Green, Pittsburgh, and Tennessee Tech for your first 3 games. I mean, there's also a decent chance that Pittsburgh comes into Neyland and takes down Tennessee. I mean, Pittsburgh, that is not a pushover game by any stretch of the imagination. And then you've got Florida, Missouri, South Carolina, Ole Miss after that. The Georgia game a little bit later this year, not until November. So kind of a different shift in the schedule there. But you're looking, if you win every non-conference game, that's 4 wins there. And then you've got to take down a couple of Missouri, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Vandy, or Kentucky to get to that 6-win mark. That's a tall task for this team. I think 6 is about right. I think that's where I would put it. And again, everybody's just assuming they're going 4-0 in non-conference. I'm not, by any means, overly confident that Pittsburgh is just a win for this team.
No, people shouldn't be. I mean, Pat Narduzzi's been there a while now. He's, that's a middle-tier Power 5 program, but they play good defense. He's built up, some depth and a solid roster. Quarterback play tells a lot of the story, for Pittsburgh, but they're going to come in and be sound and really have a chance to probably defend that offense. I would say better than quite a few opponents on this schedule. So you can't count that as a win. And so, if you lose that one, then I think, you really have to work hard to get to 6 probably. But there's also so much we don't know. I mean, we don't know who's the quarterback, how good the quarterback will be. I think if they find a quarterback who's able to operate this offense at a high level, I like what the offensive line has in terms of potential. I like the receivers a lot. Jabari Small is going to be really interesting at running back, sophomore who's stepping into a huge role. And there are still some possibilities on defense, with some of these young guys up front and new pieces up front. If that all gels together, it doesn't have to be a terrible defense.
Yeah. No, you're right. And it's going to be interesting from just a play calling standpoint. There's really nowhere to go but up. And Jim Chaney, look, he's been a good offensive coordinator in this league, and he's done a lot of good things. He was atrocious for this Tennessee team a year ago. Absolutely atrocious. So from a play calling perspective, there's nowhere to go but up offensively for Josh Heupel. Amazingly, he might use the strategy of trying to get the ball in his playmakers' hands and seeing how that works out for him. Jalen Hyatt, Bayless Jones, maybe trying that route, and we'll see what happens on that front. But
what an idea.
I think there's a lot of reason, at least for optimism. Cautious optimism is what I would phrase it for this Tennessee offense. And I think they've got a chance to be pretty good. A lot of that depends on the quarterback, I realize that. But I think the offense has a chance to be good. I don't know that the defense has much of a chance.
Yeah, it's look, Juwan Mitchell's a big add from Texas. I like the pieces in the secondary. I mean, I think there's some players who play a lot of football, not always great football, but they play a lot of football. They've seen, what this league's about and things like that. So, coaching obviously is huge. And I just look at quarterback and it's hard for me to believe that out of all these options with some real talent among those options that they aren't going to find someone who can do what they want at that position. Now that gets also interesting as camp gets going here in the distribution of reps question, because if you knew who your starter was, well, I'm sure if you're Josh Heupel, you'd love that because you need every single rep that guy can get right now in the next month, right? Instead, there's this competition, publicly anyway. Now the coaches may know exactly how it's going to go, but those reps are precious. And so that's going to be really interesting, for the reporters who follow this team on a daily basis, how quickly they move to, okay, these, I just can't believe, I don't think Heupel can take this down like late and have gamesmanship at quarterback. And to me, it's much more important that you just devote every bit of practice time you can to whoever your choice is.
And as we said, Joe Rexrode out in Knoxville today for coverage of Tennessee at their media days. When did they get things rolling, Rexrode? When does your schedule begin today?
Yeah, well, it's right as soon as the show's over, I'm busting right over there, and it will be 11 Central is the Heupel. Heupel kicks it off, and then you coordinators. How about that? Letting us talk to coordinator.
Wow.
And then a bunch of players. And then a bunch of players, including, of course, the 4 quarterbacks, all talking.
Looking forward to that. You can check out Joe's coverage at The Athletic. We'll talk about it tomorrow morning on the show as well. Highlights from Tennessee's Media Day. When we come back, we'll get into a little Nashville Predators talk. UC Saros, Dante Fabro filing for arbitration. What does this mean for them? What does this mean for the Predators as they move forward? We'll get to that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Nashville SC fans join ESPN 94.9 this Monday, August 9th from 7 to 8 p.m. for NSC Backstage featuring Nashville SC players and coaches. You can watch the show online via 102.5 The Game's Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and theGameNashville.com. NSC Backstage brought to you by Camarena Tequila, the official tequila of Nashville SC. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game, streaming live on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch as well. Joe Teron Davenport putting out there no sign of Julio Jones as the Titans start warm-up for practice today. So Julio went down yesterday, went back inside. You saw the injury. We're not all that concerned about it, but I don't think really overly surprising to not see him on the field today. Titans going to be cautious with this as they move forward with Julio Jones.
Yeah, it's not surprising. I think I predicted it earlier. I said, it's a good chance it happens. It's a good chance someone freaks out about it. There's a great chance Vrabel won't directly answer the question about it.
Yes.
That's a great opportunity for that to happen. And, again, he got up from the play, which, again, was should have been a touchdown catch from Tannehill. Kind of crouched over, kind of shaking his legs out a little bit. Eventually, he didn't go back in, and then eventually he went inside. It's not like he was like heavily limping around or anything. There was a little bit of a gingerness to how he was walking. So it's probably something that'll keep him out a couple days. That's just my guess.
We'll see what happens.
If it's something more, there is. Yeah, if he gets put on injured reserve, then I'm wrong.
Hopefully that does not happen with Julio Jones. We'll continue to keep you updated on that front. No Julio Jones on the field today for the Titans at training camp. Joe, I want to get into the Preds a little bit because a move made this past week of Dante Fabro and UC Saros filing for salary arbitration, which basically it sounds daunting, but it really means that's just kind of a deadline that's put in place to negotiate their next contract. So how this works in the NHL, there is an independent third party that if it gets to arbitration cases, they'll hear a case for the team's point of view on what the salary should be and the player's point of view on what the salary should be, and then the independent arbiter kind of makes the ruling at that point. Now, one thing to keep in mind, just because UC Saros and Dante Fabro have filed for arbitration does not mean that it's necessarily going to get there. You can come to an agreement at any time, really before a ruling is given in the arbitration hearings, and the hearings in the NHL scheduled to take place August the 11th through the 26th. So still some time for the Predators to work out a contract with UC Saros and Dante Fabro as well. But if they don't, it will go to an arbitration hearing, and then a salary of some kind will be delivered by that arbitration hearing to UC Saros and Dante Fabro. It's really one of the few advantages you have as an RFA and things that you can use to your leverage is to take something to arbitration. I don't think it's that big of a deal, especially for Dante Fabro. I will say, Joe, it can turn into a big deal with UC Saros, and what I mean by that is this. Saros at this point is 1 year away from unrestricted free agency. If he goes to arbitration and you get through the entire process, it's going to be a 1-year contract at that point. So basically, Saros would be playing again on an expiring contract and have the ability to hit free agency next year if this process plays itself out. Now, I still think there's a lot of reason and a lot of incentive for the Nashville Predators to not let it get that far and to get a multi-year deal figured out before that comes. But I will say, if it gets to that point and it is a 1-year deal for UC Saros, I think there is some cause for concern there as to what his future could look like if he's allowed to hit unrestricted free agency at that point.
Yeah, and the Preds to me can't let it get there. I'm trying to think. Remind me. I think on Victor Arvidsson it got real close, right? But then they were able to come to that deal, which I mean to me like the Victor Arvidsson deal was a pretty team friendly deal I think at the time. But that's how I looked at it. But it's interesting. Like as I went on Ryan Porth, the Preds Insiders, and we were talking about what his deal should look like, and Porth was throwing out 5 years, 5 per type stuff. And I'm like, man, I'm sure the Preds would love like a 3-year deal. I could make the case for Saros, by the way, to we've talked about this, like a 3-year deal could serve him well, even. Yep. Really, if you're betting on yourself and you're going to play close to this level, and then maybe at that point the cap situation looks better in the league. I mean, that could actually benefit you versus taking a set amount for longer term. But I think that would be a rough potential situation for the Preds if he gets the awarded 1-year deal, because there's certainly the Preds are nowhere near ready to bring their highly touted goalie prospect in to compete. So it's important for them to have Saros for the next few years at least, and maybe beyond that. So, Vingan wrote he thinks the club wants shorter term in the $3 to $4 million range. I think $5 million a year is fair for him, and I know that his high level of play, Vezina vote worthy level of play was not a long period of time, but I think $5 million a year is fair for him.
Yeah, I think right around there is fair. I agree. Like from the team's perspective, you probably are looking 3 to 4 years, trying to get around $4.5 million per year. And remember, like a lot of people have talked about the Philip Grubauer contract, which, by the way, some shakiness going on there. Apparently, have to restructure that contract out in Seattle with the way it was quote illegally constructed. So. Not a great start on that front from the Seattle Kraken. But anyway, a lot of people have talked about the contract that he signed in Grubauer as maybe a comp for UC Saros. I don't think they can use that at the arbitration hearing. I don't think you can use contracts of unrestricted free agents in this process. So that would not be the comp that they use on that point. So just wanted to throw that part of it out there. Again, I think probably a deal gets done before then. Like, if you're the Predators, I think there's got to be some urgency there to get him locked up to a longer-term deal. Now, if Saros is out there looking for an 8-year deal, I'm not doing that if I'm the Predators. So there's going to have to be some give and take on both sides. I'm not signing UC Saros to an 8-year deal. I don't really even like the idea of signing him to a 5-year deal. I think probably 4 is a good spot in the middle to meet. If I'm the team, I probably want 3. You might have to go 5 in order to do it. I think the perfect landing spot is 4. And to your point, they basically said a couple weeks ago when Jeff Kelty and David Poile were meeting with the media, Askarov is going to be 2 years away. He is spending the next 2 years in the KHL. So he'll be over there, and then they'll kind of evaluate where he's at after that. But he's not ready yet. He's not really even all that close to being ready to come over and play. So there's 2 years taken care of right there. I can't imagine that when he gets here, Askarov is just immediately going to be ready to start either. So Saros is important in the short-term future of this team. And to your point, like if he comes out and continues to play well, then he becomes a priority after that too. Like it's not like – I think there are some Predators fans that just think, all right, well, you've got Askarov in the pipeline, so Saros is going to be here for the next 3 years, and no matter how good he is, you just let him go after that. I don't think that's necessarily the case with UC Saros. You don't just let good goaltenders walk out the door for nothing.
No. I mean, the unknown, undefeated, and how many times have top prospects in any sport just not turned out to be what they were supposed to be? And then, how many times have Ferksters come out of nowhere and become starting tight end? I mean, it's just you can't count on anything, and you have a pretty good feeling for what Saros is right now. I wonder if I feel like some of Poile's deals in recent years, term has been the concession. Maybe here, you got cap space. Maybe money is the concession in exchange for a shorter term. Like, what about 4 years, $20 million? Would that be something that maybe it's a little bit more than you want to pay, but then and I think that's a good time period. I like 3, but I think 4, like you said, then you have time to see Askarov, ideally, hypothetically, in this, in the organization, in the league, but with Saros, and sort it out at that point. I mean, Saros could be the Preds' clear number one goaltender like for the next decade.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Yeah.
You know? You just don't know.
Absolutely.
Great to have, you know, a prospect of this regard, but you just don't know how that's going to work out. Saros, don't know that he's going to be what he was last year, but he's pretty good.
Certainly pretty good, and I think certainly something you feel great about, at least for the short-term future as well. When we come back, we'll continue to take your thoughts on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Also get into a crazy and potentially very troubling story out of the NHL as well regarding Evander Kane. All that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. What a moment earlier today here on the show on Robby and Rexrode. Deshaun Pfizer out there from Joe Rexrode. That was a great one, Joe. You put that one in the Hall of Fame. Tweeted that video out at 1025 The Game on Twitter, by the way, if you want to check that out. It's good stuff.
If Deshaun Kaiser ever throws a touchdown to Anthony Ferkser, it shall be known as a Pfizer.
Yes. Yes, it should.
Brilliant wordplay. I meant to do that all along.
I'm sure you did.
I absolutely love that.
It was great. Way to go, Joe.
Thanks.
Maybe somebody will make a T-shirt out of that.
But I got my Skiatika shirt, right?
Yeah, you do.
I got my Skiatika shirt, right?
Skiatika
I'm
shirt
excited.
is here in the studio. So looking forward to you getting that tomorrow. I do want to pass along. We talked about to begin the show. Carson Wentz out 5 to 12 weeks. Going to have foot surgery. Has had that surgery. Frank Reich saying today, according to Stephen Holder, the surgery went well. Went as expected. The doctors did not find any issues that prompted additional concern. So now the Colts playing the waiting game with Carson Wentz, 5 to 12 weeks. And Joe, as we discussed, that is quite the range, 5 to 12 weeks. That could mean a variety of different things for the Indianapolis Colts and what that bottom line looks like this year for their football team.
Yeah, that's quite a range. If the high end of that means he doesn't play in either game against the Titans. The second game, which is in Indy, is on November 1st.
Yep.
So that would be like he would come back the next week, and which at that point I would say that the Colts would probably be way out of it, but who knows? It's easy to say these things, and there's a lot that we don't know that's going to happen. Speaking of the Colts, by the way, friend of the show, Stephen Holder, who was with us yesterday, he tweets he's at camp, and of course, everybody's going to pads in the league today, so you're going to see a lot of, blocking sleds and whatnot. But Holder says 2 offensive line starters in the lineup today. The only thing we're going to learn about Jacob Eason at this rate is how fast he can run away from DeForest Buckner. So things going well for the Colts.
Yes, Quentin Nelson injured his foot yesterday. Apparently has been spotted in a walking boot today. So great start to training camp for the Indianapolis Colts so far. Let's go to our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Shane from Ashland City texting in. The only scared part is we've never seen Saros start strong. What is the first month of the season going to look like? And that has been a valid concern with UC Saros. He has struggled to begin seasons. Now, having said that, if he comes out next year and struggles in October and then November through April plays the way he did coming down the stretch, I'll make that trade right now if you're the Predators. But I don't think there's any question about it. He's got to figure out a way to start seasons off better than he has. And it's, he's really only done it for 1 year as the starter.
Yes.
Starting as – so there's not much sample size there. It's different as a backup. But that is going to have to be something that as a starter, and especially as a starter in an 82-game season, you got to find a way to get out of the gates and play your best because, quite frankly, the way this team is constructed right now, they're going to need him at his best.
Yeah, you hit on the key point to me. It's clear that he needs some games to get into a groove. But when you're a backup, you get one every once in a while. So your bad first month might be 3 starts. So I think that's the hope is if he's going to get every start other than the second game of a back-to-back, that it takes him less time to get up to speed. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that it's been a pretty consistent thing with him. But like you said, we've seen it one time with him as the main guy. And even then as the main guy, it was still kind of like, well, it could go either way. If one of them's hot, then that could be the starter. This is the first year when it's like, you're the guy, that's your net, go for it.
Joe, very quickly, we've not brought this up yet, but a crazy story coming out a couple of days ago in the NHL involving Evander Kane, who is, of course, a forward for the San Jose Sharks, and his wife, Anna, on Instagram, coming out with a series of posts kind of detailing some conditions that she's allegedly been living in and some actions that Evander Kane has taken, including making accusations that he has gambled on hockey, including intentionally tried to lose for profiting on gambling as well. And obviously, those are very serious allegations. The NHL is looking into it, and Kane has responded as well publicly saying, quote, I have never gambled or bet on hockey, never gambled or bet on a Sharks game, and never gambled or bet on any of my games, never thrown a hockey game. Kane coming out with that on his Twitter account. And obviously, Joe, it goes a little deeper than this. There are obviously with the child involved as well, there is a pretty disturbing kind of scene playing out publicly right now with Evander Kane and Anna Kane as well. And that's something that I think continues to be probably the most important part of this. But secondly, the allegations that are made of him betting on hockey and even trying to throw some games to lose at hockey. The NHL putting this into investigation, if that happens and it's determined that Evander Kane has done this, you can kiss his playing days goodbye. He will not be back in the NHL.
Yeah, it's a really disturbing story. To me, you withhold judgment. There's more information to come. Like you said, I think the stuff with the kid is the most troubling, really. But I think this is also maybe a handy reminder at this time, as gambling is just everywhere now in sports. Gambling destroys lives too. It's worth keeping that in mind. And even people who have lots of resources, like a professional hockey player, can have everything blown up because this can be an addiction that can overwhelm people and probably doesn't get talked about enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And a tough story, and we'll see what happens on that part of it from Evander Kane's point of view. As I said, he came out with a statement, and in the statement he talks about going against his lawyer's wishes to come out with this statement anyway. This is going to be something, and Anna Kane has come out and made more accusations as well on Instagram through her story. So this playing out in a very public way, a dispute between Evander Kane and his wife Anna, and it's just not been good. It's been pretty rough to watch and tough for the child involved that is playing out publicly as well. So we'll keep our eye on that. Joe Rexrode, have fun today at Tennessee Media Day in Knoxville. Looking forward to a full report tomorrow morning from Josh Heupel and company, and what is going to be quite an eventful day today at Tennessee Media Day.
I will be back in studio tomorrow, and I'll probably be telling you why they're going to go 10-2 this year.
Yes, we very much are looking forward to that.
Today is going to sway me.
It's going to sway you. The Vols are back, baby, as Philip Fulmer so eloquently said. This time about a year and a half ago. See what happens.
That's what he did, didn't he? This time a year ago, he was given a huge extension to Pruitt. So awesome.
Things can change very quickly in this job. We'll see what happens with Josh Heupel and company coming up today. Joe, we'll see you tomorrow. That does it for us today here on Robby and Rexrode. We'll be back at 6 a.m. Darren Donica Chase is coming up next. You're listening to ESPN 102.5 The Game.